Hello, hello. Today, the live conversation with artist Bianca Kann will be in English. So, if you're Brazilian, there's already an interview in Portuguese. Já teve a entrevista com a Bianca em português ontem e está gravada no meu IGTV. Hoje vai ser em inglês. So today it will be in English. I almost feel like I should say I see everybody from the Kann clan is here. Oh, you're here, Bianca. For some reason I don't see your invites. Did you ask to join? Huh. It's really weird because you don't appear in my list as people I could invite. Should we try again? Do you wanna get... Oi, Camila. Okay, Bianca joined again. Let's see. Yes, now it worked. So it's always on the second twins. Let's see. Olá, hello.
Você tá me vendo?
Yes, let me just make sure I write down that it will be in English for Brazilians not to go crazy.
Yes. But for some reason, it takes a second for the request to join.
To show up?
Yeah, but it did.
I am so excited to do it again. So excited.
I had a time.
There's something about repetition. Ish, there's a delay. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say thank you so much for having me again. Truly.
I think we can do it every day. Should we try Spanish tomorrow?
You see, today I put on my glasses because it's my American alter ego.
I see. Very good. I am super excited to have you back. Thanks again. And again, I will introduce you. Maybe a lot of the people know you already, but you know, just in case. This is Bianca Kann, one of my favorite artists. Woo! She is American Brazilian. Her mom is Brazilian. Her dad is American. She came to the US to attend NYU. She started at Gallatin, which is a very broad interest, generated, let's say, content course that you pick and choose what you feel like studying, more than one profession per se. And then she ended up shifting. So after studying psychology and how do you say letras in English?
Comparative literature.
And comparative literature, she ended up choosing to focus on the arts and went to Steinhardt, still at NYU.
Mm-hmm.
And then since she graduated in 2017, she has worked in all sorts of different places, which I think is so amazing. So she's worked at the Laundromat, a nonprofit. She will talk about it. She worked at the NYU Gallery, Gallatin Gallery. She worked at Michael Werner, a German gallery that has a location here in the Upper East Side. She's worked for 2 years with one of Brazil's most internationally known artists, Vic Muniz. She's currently working at Columbia University in the mental health department, should I call it this way?
Mm-hmm.
And she plays the piano. Woo! She's super talented. Has been to the Birdcliff residency, which is one of the most respected residency programs in the East Coast. Bob Dylan, Eva Hesse, and Philip Guston are some of the alumni. So we'll hear her talk. And maybe I should also say that your work, your practice as an artist experiments with lots of different materials. So there's textile work, there is ceramics, there's painting, there's digital drawings now, there's crayon drawings. And I think that's one of the most amazing aspects of your work. It makes it clear that you're very, you feel very free. And as you say, everything is very sincere when it comes to what you present. So I'll stop talking. And why don't you tell us a little bit of how that first transition from multiple topics to focusing in the arts happened in your brain?
Okay. So initially, as Giselle just said, I started at Gallatin. It's a school within NYU. It's the school of individualized study. So it's basically for people who want to create their own major. And we have flexibility there. A lot of people who are confused about what to do, but others who are just don't fit the mold of different majors specifically. And I identified with that at the time. As an 18-year-old coming straight from Brazil to New York, I wasn't exactly sure of what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I knew that I had an interest in the arts in general. I've always drawn my whole life and been interested in visual art, but I didn't know, I wasn't sure what it would look like to commit to an program and what of an artist even looked like. I didn't have any references growing up. And so I got into Gallatin and I was studying a lot of comparative literature, a lot of psychology minor, and I was still taking a lot of art courses. And I think with time, I started to find my own grounding within within visual art and finding my own sort of voice within that. And I guess I gained more confidence eventually. And then my junior year had this epiphany that I had to the art program and commit to being an artist and learn more about technique and art history. And that's when I made that leap and I transferred from Gallatin to Steinhardt within NYU. And it was extremely gratifying. It was like a completely different type of education, very hands-off, way more actual. Most of the professors in the program are working artists, so we would have class and then after class go to their openings, which was and some of those are Rico Gatson, who is like my mentor. I also worked for him.
An amazing artist. Everyone should follow.
Yes. Who else? Ian Cooper, who's now the art director for Monkey Paw Productions. It's Jordan Peele's production company. And that movie Us that just came out last year. He's amazing. David Kennedy Cutler. So the NYU faculty is amazing, and we've really got like hands-on experience.
That's so amazing.
Yeah. So, but as I said yesterday, it was important for me to transfer, to feel as if I was part of the artistic community, meet other artists, and really embody that mentally, and feel like, okay, I truly belong here. It's not just something I like. It's not a hobby. It's like I am an artist, and that was important for me psychologically. But I do not discard any of the other things I've studied, and I feel like they're essential and inform my work completely. Critical thinking, literature, psychology, just like understanding human behavior, the mind, like everything is totally interdisciplinary for me. Yeah,
and as you said, you didn't grow up thinking that being an artist was a career, like a possibility of a real job. So it's kind of interesting to kind of in school start noticing that there's lots of different paths that we can take. But if I remember correctly, your dad makes amazing drawings, doesn't he?
He makes one drawing.
Okay.
He's the most consistent artist ever. It's called the sponge bird. It's this bird that has sponges for its feet, and he's done it since he was a kid. So yeah, it's a fantastic.
I remember that artwork, that very consistent artwork.
Yeah.
When I introduced you, I forgot two things. I mean, I'm sure I could have made that very much broader, because I didn't say you're a twin, which I think is very nice. Camila is here. You will see her comments are very loving and supporting. But also, I didn't mention that you also worked in a museum, the Sugar Hill Children's Museum. and that you were about to go to Anderson Ranch for a residency this summer, or kind of spring summer, but of course we're all stuck wherever we are. Should we talk about so the next step, right? So you graduate from school, and we can go back and talk about your work experiences in all those different settings, but maybe let's talk about how do you choose the residency programs that you apply to? How is that kind of a second phase after you're done with school and you have part-time jobs, but you still want to keep working in your own practice and not just be an assistant or you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's really interesting because I'm lucky enough that my part-time jobs were flexible enough to allow for that. I know a lot of people in my position, my age, who just graduated from art want to do that, don't have the chance because they either have full-time jobs or their part-time jobs don't allow that flexibility. Like they wouldn't hire them again if they came back. So because I was working at Vic at the time that I applied for
Vic Muniz, the Brazilian artist, just to
because I was working for, and they foster a community of artists there. Like everyone who works there is an artist, and they were extremely supportive at that studio. So they were more than willing to write recommendations for me and like have me go to these residencies and would take me back if afterwards.
That's so amazing. It's like a very supportive.
Exactly. They want to kind of like stimulate young artists and help. So that was super cool. And I took that opportunity and then I did research and like talking to other artists, friends who had gone to residencies and listening to which ones they recommended. And I kind of made a list and applied to a couple, and I didn't get into some, I got into others, but luckily I got into the ones I wanted to the most, which was insane. And as you said, Anderson Ranch was going to be this year, but it got postponed. And I went to Birdcliff last year, and that was super cool. As I did mention this yesterday too, I have mixed feelings about it looking back, because I did meet like an amazing group of artists and I'm still friends with them. We talk all the time, but it was also very difficult because of the amount of freedom and lack of structure that a residency provides. And not all residencies, but at least Cliff, they provided me with a studio and but that's pretty much it, and like a room, but we bring our own materials and you're just basically awarded the space and time to do work. And I was like on a mountain in Woodstock, like in a different environment, and it was very peaceful and word, like it was extremely like good, like stimulating for art making. The problem was like I didn't know how to put limits on myself. I feel like I pushed myself a little too hard and wasn't, sleeping enough or whatever, because I just got so excited that I had all this time and the opportunity to make so much work. But having said that, I did make a lot of work, more than I expected, and work that I am proud of. So I'm super grateful for.
You should be proud, because I loved seeing what you produced when you came back. And in a way, you can think of it too as, first of all, I think time is the number one luxury an artist can have. I mean, to produce his work and feel like he shouldn't be doing something else. But to understand that going to that residency, maybe that was the lesson you learned there, is to see how important it is to manage your time and to understand that you have to create sometimes your own limits. And as Silvia helped you here, she said the word liberal, right? So very liberal, very open, the residency environment.
Yeah, I was thinking more of like propicio, like the environment was very
appropriate, very inviting.
Inviting, exactly, for art making. And yeah, so exactly. as I said, like I learned a lot about myself and my process and learning how to control things. But it was a good time to challenge myself, and I feel like I grew a lot as an artist at that time. So I really recommend artists applying to any kind of residency that provides a space. Yeah.
Amazing. So let's go back. Let's go back in time. Tell me a little bit about. Should we talk a little bit about your work before we talk about the places where you worked at? And I'm gonna show an image in my backup phone so that you could describe. So this is a show that I curated. Bianca was part of in 2018. It was called Fresh in the Lower East Side. And these pieces on the wall, why don't you go ahead and describe it?
So the pieces on the wall are mostly ceramic works, and they're just different kind of symbols and images that I've collected that reoccur in my work. A lot of them I bring from have this kind of childish, prudish feel to them, and it's just a kind of what I was saying is I try to like curate my own visual language through these symbols, and you know, symbols, that is language. Going back to like hieroglyphs and the Egyptians, they were figurative symbols that were language. So I think I'm just trying to make my own sort of kind of
representation of.
Yeah, exactly. And these are just symbols that usually reoccur, and I kind of juxtapose them. Sometimes I abandon some, I bring some back. Yeah, it's kind of like a journey of self-discovery, and it's a very intuitive process, is something I was talking about. Not sometimes there is a lot of didacticism or research behind like the symbolism of an image I want to use, but other times I feel like I'm just giving in to impulse and intuition and following my own kind of visual assortment in my mind, and not necessarily trying to question that impulse that much. Yeah.
And I also love what you said about what inspires you, and having, you know, growing up in Brazil in the 90s. And maybe the references will not be very clear for Americans, but maybe we could try with equivalents, right? What would you describe? Because you were also coming here as a half American.
Yeah.
You have both identities.
So I don't know. So yesterday I was talking about my influences and growing up in the 90s in Brazil. Like a lot of my imagery references were my aesthetic references were what the culture I was consuming, like on TV and magazines, and a lot of those TV shows were Brazilian TV shows that if I said here, no, like Castelo Rá-Tim-Bum, Sítio do Pica-Pau Amarelo, but they were really colorful and full of textiles and textures. But there's one that might be international. It was called Pingo. It was a stop motion of a penguin, and it was like clay stop motion. He didn't speak, he just made sounds. I think it was a German show, but for some reason they showed it in Brazil, and so that was also a kind of a aesthetic reference that I think really influenced me. And also kawaii culture, because in Brazil there's a big Japanese, in São Paulo there's a big Japanese neighborhood called Liberdade.
We have the largest community of Japanese people outside of Japan is in our hometown of São Paulo. It makes us very proud because we have good sushi.
Amazing culture. But so
you were talking about Kauai, sorry.
Yeah, that's a very interesting neighborhood because there's this mixture of like heavy Brazilian culture with heavy Japanese culture, and the mix of both and where they meet, and it's super, super cool. And I used to go there a lot as a child, and my parents would take me to these stores like they're all like next to each other, like bundled in these small buildings, and they sell a lot of kind of what's the word, like these material, like school materials, like erasers, you know, these cute papers, and they had lots of these little food erasers, like miniature food, and I was really into that. I used to collect them, and I was truly obsessed. And I think that kind of childhood fixation on these miniature cute kawaii things still has an influence on me, because I'm still interested in it aesthetically, and I do think I bring that into my work. A lot of people have described my work as cute sometimes,
Mhm.
and I used to be offended, I think, at first, like my work's not cute, like, but I've learned to embrace that, because I think there's something extremely subversive about cuteness.
Oh
Uh,
yes.
I read a book, I think, in college called The Cuteness of the Avant-Garde. It's
Uh-huh.
super interesting, by this, I think, Japanese American critical theorist called Sia, and she talks about like cuteness as sadistic and cuteness as subversive, how the cute object can infantilize the infantilizer. I mean, the cute object is like totally dominated by whoever is um is
Playing with it or in charge of it. Yeah.
yeah, because it's so helpless and vulnerable and cute, they chill it sometimes. So we have these sadistic impulses in the face of a cute object, but also um the interesting thing is that it can subvert that power back, because we sometimes have this reaction of oh, and we become vulnerable to the cute object. So I don't know, that relationship and power dynamic is something I think about in my work. um Also, just reflecting on miniatures and food, and how that's kind of like items of domesticity and sold to children, usually females, as this kind of
Craft.
craft, like female object. And when food is totally non-gender, so weird, you know, but they sell it in like pink kitchen sets. And so this commodification of cuteness and domesticity and all that kind of, I don't know, these are like just ideas I that go into my
Yeah,
process.
no, it's so interesting because as you were describing uh cuteness and how loaded it can become. Um, First of all, I thought of Felicia. I don't know if Felicia is her name, but from Looney Tunes. Remember, she used to squeeze little stuffed animals. Anyways, maybe it's an 80s reference, someone who grew up in the 80s. But she would
I
just look at this cute thing and go like, ah! You know? So there's
Yeah,
definitely this kind of weirdness of something that is cute. And I love that you said at first it used to bother me because it's not nice to be cute because usually it means you're not strong or you're not
yeah,
smart or you're not, but it's so interesting how you can play with it. Like I think Mike Kelly does an amazing job at doing super creepy
yeah.
and loaded artworks that are made with stuffed animals that he finds in the street. So there's also this idea of the disposable, right? Like especially with toys, like how long do they last? Only until the kid grows up. Anyway, so I think there's a lot of things that could be.
That's exactly. And I think, yeah, cuteness and grotesqueness go really hand in hand, and there's something really and um interesting about that relationship. And yeah.
And then I also wanted you to talk a little bit about how you said you grew up going to how do you call it, the farmers market in Brazil, right?
Yeah.
The feira, and how you also had this obsession with refrigerator magnets that were
Yeah.
also food or looked like a Play-Doh, and how Play-Doh became ceramic, practice in ceramic. Is that
Uh-huh. So I yes, that's exactly it. I used to go to these farmers markets that were close to my house. It was every Thursday, and they would sell. There would be women selling magnets, like for kitchen magnets for the fridge, that were made out of kind of oven baked clay, I guess, because it was hardened, it wasn't ceramic, and they had googly eyes, and they had like wobbly limbs, and I just so obsessed with that too. Like I was really attracted to those, and I think it was my encounter with sculpture really, because even though that is totally marginalized sculpture and would be considered craft, be considered sculpture, I 100% value that work, and I see that as like, you know, extremely valuable and interesting and amazing, the work women did. And I have them, like I collect these magnets, I have them until um and I think my work almost like mimics a lot of that aesthetic, which is the yeah, yeah. It's something like simple and handmade and sincere that I appreciate about it, that I try to also encapsulate my work. Yeah.
I also think it's interesting how you describe the shift, we could say. You were already making works in what material were you using before you moved to resin when you did this, the green structures? They are wire and then some sort of
Plaster.
plaster. Eu tava pensando em gesso.
So,
and then after the residency, they became resin, right? So maybe talk a little bit about this transition. And I love the sun above the, the resin.
So I've always been interested in materials and just experimenting with different materials, bringing together things in a kind of non-hierarchical way, just bringing like high-class materials with low-class materials and just kind of marrying them. It makes sense to me. And so I started with mostly ceramics, I guess, because it was what I knew, what was familiar to me and what was accessible, was kind of like playing with clay, ceramics, and textiles, because I had access to that. My aunt growing up is an amazing textile artist. She taught me how to crochet, so I became interested in those kinds of works, and that's what I had seen also in Brazil. There's just a lot of craft. I was using these materials, and then as obviously I got familiar with different techniques and more materials, I started trying to, I guess, experiment a little more, and I moved into which is a plastic, and it's a little more durable than ceramics, and it allowed me to expand in terms of scale, but expand I think like make my works more complex by allowing for more interaction of different materials, and yeah, and it ended up kind of being like the meshing of different mediums. So it not only was sculpture, but it became painting, drawing at the same time.
And even the threads, right? Because it has space, just like fabric or textile would, right? So it's literally every material that you used, every medium.
So there's a part of it that's fabric. So there's a lot that you can incorporate into, you know, these resin sculptures I found. And
is the fabric the black and white in the bottom?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it allowed me to kind of bring all these ideas that I was grappling with together, and it became a more cohesive whole for me, which was exciting. And also the idea of making multiples, because, you know, it's mold making. That was also exciting, to make the same kind of structure, but paint it in a different way, or reappropriate it, remake it. So I have a lot of fun with the resin. I try to think of it as like sculptural paintings. And but yeah, as I said yesterday too, like I'm worried about resin, super toxic, and I'm trying to think of a way to use not only to protect myself, but to make my own resin. That would be amazing. Yeah.
So that's interesting too. your fascination with materials in a way appears throughout the work, because it seems to me, and I've spoken to your mother about it, and I love what she told me, because she said even when you were 5-year-old, you know, a 5-year-old, you were already playing and turning everything into something else. And I think it would be amazing to witness this research of how resin can become something else, and how, you know, maybe the final, not the final because you have your entire life ahead of you, but like that would be your love for material could become a material itself, you know what I mean? Like the getting to a place where you feel like you have the material, you were mixing all of this together. So I think that's very nice. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what did you learn? I know this is like a tricky question, so feel free to do something else with it, but because you had this very diverse, in a way, experience, right? So you worked in a high-end gallery, and then in a university gallery, and then in a NGO that helps, a nonprofit that helps immigrant artists, you know, get their work and research going. So what did you learn from each job that you have? I know it's a long, hard question, but just talk a little bit about them all.
Yeah, so basically I had kind of I had the experience of every different facet of the art world, basically. Worked at a gallery. I worked at a gallery in a university gallery, high-class gallery outside of the university, nonprofit, and they were totally different experiences, and just kind of interesting, gave me like a broader perspective on the world, on how different every facet is, and it's almost like they don't even communicate with each other. They just seem so distinct, and even more distinct from the art making and the artist, which is like the crazy part, because it's all about the artist at the end of the day, but it seems like a foreign concept, almost like removed when you're at the front lines of those gallery and like museum settings. So at Gallatin Gallery, it was basically a combination of student artists and artists, well-known artists,
respected and established.
Yeah, and so that was super cool. It was my first experience learning put up a show and install things and measure things and basic skills that you need as an artist. And afterwards I moved, and that was a tiny gallery, so it was basically run by me and a friend of mine and a professor of ours, and so you got to wear many hats, and that was really cool. And then I moved on to the Michael in the Upper East Side. Michael Werner was very different, obviously, and they represent like extremely famous artists, Peter Doig, and I was a gallery assistant, so I had to kind of talk about the work or do whatever was necessary. Whenever someone came in, if they had a question, I would be the first person they would ask, and I met some interesting people there. I met Paul Whiting, who has George Gallery in Brooklyn, and he invited me to a group show, and it was my first show outside of college.
Amazing.
So that's super cool. So there's always like a great community of artists and people interested in art that you meet along the way, and that was I think the biggest thing from these jobs is just like meeting interesting people, I guess.
And funnily enough, there's a lot of artists working in galleries, right? Like as in different jobs, right? As the registrar or as the you know, the person who hang the show. So it's very interesting how even Hauser and Wirth during the quarantine, one of the things they did was to organize an exhibition online with work by the staff and the staff's families. I don't know if you saw that, but I was like, it's so smart because everybody working in a gallery is an artist, you know.
What museum? What gallery?
Hauser and Wirth.
Hauser and Wirth. Oh my God, that's so cool. That's so cool.
And of course, when you work with Vic Muniz, there's also, we spoke about Maíra Senise yesterday, another Brazilian artist based in New York. But there's also this sense of network.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Exactly. So at Vic, I met Maíra, which I think she joined. I don't know if she's here anymore. But
Let's see, I'll open the comments. The comments are like on your face, so I turned them off a little bit.
yeah, they're kind of, I can't focus. But she was, so she's my, wait, I feel like there's someone here. So I met Maíra, and she's an amazing Brazilian artist, mostly painter, but also sculptor. And she's just super inspiring and has inspired me a lot in my own work too. And so that, and she's a great friend of mine. So I met like lifelong friends working at, and what else?
So do you want to talk a little bit about the laundromat and maybe Colombia? So let's go laundromat, and then we talk about what you're currently doing.
Yeah. So the Laundromat Project is an arts nonprofit that works with really engaged artists, mostly in Queens and the Bronx and Brooklyn. And they're really, what the work they do is super interesting. They pair up artist assistants with these artists who they give grants to. It's sort of a residency for these artists, and they're mostly artists of color or immigrant artists, and together we develop projects that benefit their community usually. And the artist I was assigned to was a Filipino artist, and his work was kind of curating an oral history project of the Filipino community in Queens. Their history was kind of erased, and there wasn't enough artwork or a registration of this passage from the Philippines to New York, and he wanted to be the first person to kind of capture that. And I helped along the way, interviewing people and kind of hosting different workshops for the children of the community. And so it was like a totally different like experience from Michael Werner, very much art activism.
And also you go from the more not only commercial, but like dealing with the public looking at the art versus the artist looking at his process in a very even like if you're thinking about research and like you being there to help them, you become part of like the first step in the ecosystem that will end up being seen by the public much later.
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a humbling opportunity to witness that process, kind of like the brainstorming and just like from the very beginning. And that's what the Laundromat Project does. And there are just so many different projects going on, and it's super enriching. And I really recommend people check out the Laundromat Project. Yeah, if you
and
go
they
on.
Started in the laundromat, right? Which I loved when you told me.
Yeah, it started in a laundromat. People were waiting for laundry to be done, and they just started about art and different ideas activities that could be done while you wait for your laundry. And then they did a project during one of those moments of laundry making, and then it just expanded into a bigger idea of community engaged, community based art. So yeah, like truly like such a cool opportunity and such a different like very it opened my horizons a lot into like the possibilities of art and how it can its power of activation, inciting change, and art being political and very different from just like $1 million painting being sold. But it was cool to have these
both perspectives. Yeah. And even this idea that I think in this kind of job, from what you're describing, you get in touch with something that is so specific, right? So I have been in New York for 13 years now, and I don't necessarily know where the Filipino community lives. Like I know where the Brazilian community lives, so it's interesting to also get to know how specific each community can be, or how each artist's practice can be so unique, and you learn so much from that different spectrum.
Exactly. And even talking about geography, like I feel like even the museums and the galleries differ in their aesthetic and their kind of mission and what they show, depending on where they're located, because of I guess the artists they curate, because a lot curate from the community, or just it's just super interesting to see like the spectrum of like what, you know, artists can be and what art looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. And then currently you're working in the mental health department at Columbia University, which kind of links us back to your Gallatin phase, right? Where you were studying psychology. So, and then tell us a little bit about the project in Mozambique, and then we'll go from there.
I was working, my last job I was at Vic Muni's studio, and before that also I worked at other art studio. I just want to mention I worked for Rico Gatson, amazing artist, and Richard Phillips. But once I felt like I have a studio and I had my own practice, and I've had all these experiences with different facets of the art world, I kind of was ready to just make my own work and not necessarily work in the art world anymore. And I moved on to a different job at Columbia University. It's I work in the global mental health department.
Mm-hmm.
As Giselle said, that is coming back to my interest in psychology, and something I've always been interested in that I think completely informs my practice. As I said, like understanding the human mind and behavior is something that totally is part of my work. And so I work there now, and the study that we're doing right now is focused on Mozambique, and
which is a Portuguese speaking country.
Yeah, it's super cool, and we are helping implement mental care into the primary care system there, and working alongside the Ministry of Health. It's truly such a mind-blowing experience, and I got to go there earlier this year, and it's such a beautiful country. Yeah, like there's just such rich culture there. And I was saying yesterday, these beautiful textiles.
I'll see if I can pull up the image. Keep going.
There are these beautiful textiles there called capulanas. They're these fabrics that have different patterns.
Uh-huh.
And these patterns are super cool, super inspiring. They're beautiful. And today I was actually in a meeting with them earlier with people, and they were wearing masks made out of capulanas.
Amazing. We need some in New York.
Yeah. And what was I going to say about this work? Yeah.
You were saying that you help the primary care kind of think about and include mental health as part of their.
Yeah, and now we're working with like responding to COVID, because obviously there's going to be a peak in anxiety and depression and maybe even suicide. So, yeah, it's very intense and interesting work.
And then speaking of the virus, COVID, you and your twin sister came up with this amazing idea of turning your craft or your jewelry making into necklaces and bracelets, everything. You can wear them as you want, and all the sales revert to nonprofits in Brazil that are helping people in need to deal with the virus. Do you want to show some of the items? Is Camila there today?
Yeah. Camila.
She wants to say hi. I'm going to open the comments, so if people have questions, they can ask.
Hello.
Hello, Camila. So nice to see you.
So we made these necklaces, and we're going to them tonight because we just made a new batch. And all of the profits will go to 3 nonprofits in São Paulo, with 3 different causes. One is for people with disabilities, the other one is for people in favelas, and the third one is women in prostitution. And yeah, it's like we've already raised 5,000 reais, and we just want to keep helping.
And each one costs $15, right? And you ship worldwide.
Yeah, we ship to the US for now.
So US.
Want to buy it, we talk about it, we discuss ways for them to get it. But for people in the US, it's just Venmoing us or using PayPal, and then we'll do the deposit bill and send everyone a receipt to show proof of the donation.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You should be so proud. It's so nice that you found a way to help. And I'll post on my stories, and you should post on yours too, Bianca, but the at Beads for Life.
I will, yeah.
So that people can find.
Round 2 of bracelets and necklaces out. So keep an eye for a batch we're going to release.
Keep an eye. Keep an eye. So, do you want to talk a little bit about what you've been doing during the quarantine in terms of art? So the beads, you told me you drove by Target, bought some beads, you know, the ones that like are supposed to be toys for kids, but then you also bought some crayons, and I think I have an image here, but talk about what you've been doing, producing.
Yeah, so I've been mostly, because I don't have my studio, and I've been working with what I've had access to. I've been making crayon drawings on paper and digital drawings on the computer. On the computer so much for work and other purposes that it's just felt natural to use it as a medium. Yeah. And,
oh, I love this one so much.
And yeah, so that's what I've been doing mostly in terms of like art making, and kind of like, obviously I've always done sculptures in my head, sketchbook where I future drawings for the future, but yeah, mostly making a lot of drawing, which is cool for me, because I usually only draw as a form of like, it's kind of like part of the process. It's just a sketch for something else. And now I've been going back to drawing as its own kind of final form. So yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about it, but it's fun.
I saw the other day someone talking on the live like this one, saying that we are in survival mode right now, you know, so whatever you're doing will definitely even as we were talking about your residency, right? If it serves for us to learn that we should have done it in a different way, right? But we're always learning. There's no mistake. I don't believe in mistakes.
Yeah, I don't believe in mistakes either. Also, something I wanted to bring up that I forgot to talk about yesterday is there's this really cool project happening in New York and now in Rio. In New York, I forget what it's called, but basically this artist called Elizabeth Jagger started a Google Drive for people to put things, digital, whatever, scan drawings, and for health workers. So basically people were putting them out and creating a kind of gallery of sorts within like the nurses' break room. And they're kind of like messages of, you know, support and like positive and reinforcement, and art as mental health support, and it's super cool. And then Ana Biao, who you've worked with, Brazilian artist, started it in Rio. So she opened her own drive, and I've just been helping her expand the project a bit in Rio and trying to get in touch with different clinics, and we already expanded it quite a bit. And so it's a super project, and it got to the Secretary of Health right now, so they might use it in a campaign. So it's still like in the works, but the project has grown, and anyone who
how can they find the drive if they're artists?
Go to Ana Biao's Instagram, BIA.
Let me write down her name. I think it's Ana Biao. Let me write it down so people can look it up.
I just wrote a comment. Lara Kann May is a Turkish artist. She was my first studio mate. And curator. She works at a gallery in Chelsea. I forget what it's called, but she curated a Turkish online artsy show right now and included me. So thank you, Lara.
Amazing. And we will do an online show soon, but we'll talk about it later, right?
Yeah.
1 month from now, we come back with another live just to talk about our upcoming projects. And I am going to misbehave and insist that you play the piano for me, because yesterday I invited her to play the piano because it's my favorite thing on earth is to listen to someone playing the piano. And she said she couldn't turn the keyboard. And I said, so please Google how to turn the keyboard on and play some for us in the American live. So you don't have to be shy. There's only 16 people watching, and half of them are probably your best friends and family. And
I'll give a little taste. Okay.
Yes, that's what we want. Don't you? If you want to hear her play, please send hearts here. I'm gonna send a heart. Let me find here hearts.
Sure.
Como foi pra câmera?
My heart is already beating faster. Just
Tem
the
como
first
não?
notes.
Não sei. Tem como foi pra câmera?
Eu e a Camila no fã-clube garantidos aqui, né, Camila? Muito bom. Adorei que você tocou meio Thelonious Monk, assim, meio de pé ali, toda curva.
Não dá, foi improv natural, tudo. Yeah, so that's just
Sorry, I forgot I was meant to speak English. I love that you played like Thelonious Monk, kind of curved over the piano and very, very cool about it.
I don't know if you could hear it properly because it's weird. This piano only works when connected to the computer, which was
perfect. It was perfect. It made my day.
Thank you. But yeah, that piece is called Arabesque by French impressionist composer Debussy.
Ooh,
yeah.
Okay. So if people want to hire you for live piano sessions, no, it was really special. I love following what you do. And as someone very smartly said here, is there anything she can't do? I don't think so. So keep doing. And I know you're an amazing skier. So next time we'll do a live with you coming down the mountain too.
I hope if they ever open the mountains, you know.
I know. But thanks again from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, Camila, for being virtual and real support.
Thank you so much. We love you so much, and we admire your work. And thank you for this opportunity. And I'm so happy to work with you always.
Always a pleasure. I will save this one again on my IGTV, and I will post it on YouTube. So if you have a cousin, a friend, anyone who needs to listen to the inspiring voice and music and art of Bianca, link them up. And stay tuned. There's always more to come, right, Bianca?
Always more to come.
Always.
Alex, I see my friend Alex is here. I love you. Yes, thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. And yeah, and it's funny how, thank you for making me play the piano, because at first I was like, why are we gonna play piano in a live about art? But again, I feel like my life is very interdisciplinary, and this just made even more sense to do this at the end. Yeah.
Yes. Why separate things, right? It's like the Moebius tape, we were talking about it, right? The inside and the outside can be part of the same path.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks to everyone who stayed. Yeah, have a nice Tuesday. Bye. Thank you, Bianca.
Thank you.